Greetings sailors and welcome back to World of Warships and one of my own games. This is from around mid-January and it's actually one of the ships I got from the Christmas gift boxes, which were, I think, pretty well received. It was a pretty good move on Wargaming's part and I hope they continue to do that in future years. So yeah, I got this and The Sims, and overall I've played The Sims a lot more, mostly because I can drop a US destroyer captain into it, whereas this, although it is a US destroyer, it's a Sea Hull Benson, it's on the Pan-Asian tech tree being in air quotes there, because it basically is this and the An Shan. So I've been using the An Shan captain in this on the rare occasions when I have actually played it. And it's not ideal because one's a Soviet destroyer and one's American, so it's not like the captain skills match exactly. But there's a reasonable amount of overlap. It would be better to have one captain for each. But I don't really play it enough to be able to have enough captain points to make it worthwhile, so I've just shared the captains, and it's less than optimal, but it'll do. So with this being from the gift boxes, it's actually hard for me to say who this is from exactly. I just kind of count this in The Sims as being collective gifts from a number of people, and it's rather nice to have it because when they were on sale originally I bought the An Shan for myself, but I passed on this. I wasn't that interested in US destroyers at the time, and since then, well, it's one of those things where it's like, well, if it comes on sale again, maybe I will buy it, but as it was, I didn't have to, which was quite nice. But The Sims was more nice because The Sims was one that was less likely to be on sale, as it was one of the pre-order ships. So this is a top tier game. It's epicenter, which means we're all going to be tussling around in the middle, where my hydro might come in particularly useful. And there's also carriers in play. It's a pair of Japanese tier 8 carriers. So less dangerous as far as I'm concerned than a US carrier would be with the US carrier dive bombers. But if they're a skilled player, they might give me trouble with manual drops. So that remains to be seen. And also, of course, there's just the fact that they can air spot me. So I've started off with one torpedo hit, and the torpedoes on this ship aren't bad. I don't think they're particularly fast. In fact, I think they are the same torpedoes that you get on the Mayhan once you've got that upgraded. I have a feeling they're the same 9.2 kilometer torps anyway. The Sims has also got torps that I think are 9.2 kilometers, but they do rather less damage. So The Sims is much more about the guns. Now, being a Sea Hull Benson means I've got okay AA, but I don't get defensive AA as a consumable. Or maybe I do, actually. I can't remember. No, I don't think you do get defensive AA on this. I think you get the choice of the speed boost or the hydro. And for a long time, this was the only destroyer with hydro. But of course, we've got the Germans in the game now. So it's still a useful tool, but it's a little bit less unique than it used to be. So I'm looking to make another drop at this point, maybe smoke up and do some more damage, and I do use smoke very selfishly in this game. There are certainly a number of occasions when I could have dropped smoke for allies and it might have saved a ship or two, or at least kept them alive longer. But no, I definitely was playing very selfishly with my smoke. I mean, this Tirpitz, for instance, that's ahead of me, I could easily get into a position to smoke him. And instead, I don't know why I chose not to, but maybe it's just by the time I looked around again and I was thinking about it, I saw it was such low health that I probably wouldn't get there in time. And yeah, there we go. Unfortunately, he's copped it. And the disadvantage, of course, of not having the speed boost is you can't catch up to somebody quicker to drop smoke for them. So we're kind of both facing off against each other. There's a couple of outriders on each team, as it were, but most of the action is concentrated around the south middle of the map, if that makes any sense. I've also found the two enemy destroyers who, whilst aren't in a division, are sticking together. Now, they're both Japanese destroyers as well, and that means they're not so dangerous to me in terms of their guns, but when I do things like this, I do have to expect torpedoes. And we already saw earlier on when I first smoked up that yes, There were definitely incoming torpedoes, but they were expected. This time, however, I'm using the hydro just to give myself that bit of extra warning. And there they are. Now, I've made a bit of a mistake here. My positioning is such that whilst I've actually dropped the smoke in a pretty reasonable way, I could have put myself in the smoke so that I could just have gone forward and used that little bit of headland to shield myself from the torpedoes, and that would have been fine. And instead, I've actually forced myself out of my own smoke because of not particularly good positioning. So I could have sat in that smoke and made much longer use of it. But instead, that's not the case. I've had to abandon it. If you're wondering, by the way, the little counter that says first last, that's the smoke counter mod. I don't think that's being updated now. I seem to remember that there'd been some change in the client which meant that they couldn't find the values that needed to make that mod work correctly. So I'm not sure that particular mod is available anymore. There might be something similar that someone else has done, and it's one of those things that I suspect sooner or later will make it into the vanilla client. I mean, we do now have mini-map ship names in the vanilla client, which is incredibly useful. You know, that's a thing that's been in World of Tanks for ages and ages at this point, or at least it feels like ages and ages. And so, you know, that gives everybody a level playing field in terms of the information they have available. And I fully expect the smoke counter as well, because there's other useful things like the smoke rings mod. You know, that originally started, well, as I said, I actually said mod there, didn't I? Yeah, that started as a mod, and it's now in the vanilla client because it's a very useful bit of information. So it's been more or less even trades at this point. I killed a low health Bayern. I've done a little bit more damage besides, but nothing too significant so far. Although 40k damage is not completely terrible. If I was in a tier 8 cruiser, for instance, I'd be looking at, you know, if my Megami in particular, or the New Orleans, I'd be looking at 40k and thinking, okay, that's probably okay. That's probably not too bad. If I was sitting in the Kutuzov and looking at 40k damage, I'd be thinking, I can definitely do better. But yeah, the regular tier 8 cruisers, for the most part, they don't tend to have a huge amount of survivability available. So this is a perfect spot to set up an ambush against this Nagato. The remaining, no, not remaining, actually, the other destroyer is still alive. This destroyer, the Akatsuki, he's also come around at very close range, hoping to maybe get some torps into our Nagato. I could have used Hydro here. I'm not sure why I didn't. It certainly would have been the sensible thing to do, but for some reason I chose not to pop it. So, anyway, torpedoes out, although it looks like the Nagato is slowing. At this range, I still should score some hits. There's the Akatsuki again. And, well, he's actually a more important target right now. And he's actually using the Nagato as a shield there. So, 3 hits into the bow of the Nagato, which caused flooding. He's now also perfectly broadside. I mean, he's low enough health that I can easily finish him off with the guns. And I actually put a couple of salvos of AP in here as well. At this range, against a target like the Nagato, when you've got access to the upper belt or the superstructure, when you can just put out shots over and over, you know, that the AP is absolutely a viable choice in most destroyers, in fact. So that's one ship down. There's multiple planes overhead, but my smoke is going to last a little while yet. And the Akatsuki comes around for another pass. And I know he's put out torpedoes. He might maybe have had a launcher available, but as it turned out, no. Or if he did, he wasn't able to get them off in time. So that's one destroyer down. We're down to only a couple of ships ourselves now, though. I mean, it really, this was a close game all the way down the line, and the enemy team did have possession of that middle cap for a while, so they do have the points advantage. But yeah, it's 4 ships per side. Now the enemy carrier is still wreaking, I'm not going to say wreaking havoc, but causing some trouble. He's not actually managed to kill anything. We lost our own carrier up in the north because, for whatever reason, although it was quite clear he could have moved east, he stuck behind that island on the A line for just the entire game, up until the point when an enemy ship came up and killed him. So I think he also managed to kill the ship that killed him. so there was a bit of mutual annihilation, but still, it would have been nice to have kept our carrier even alive at this point. So there's the remaining destroyer, and I'm actually correct in saying that this time, the Kagero, who was rather low health, so that was a really unequal fight. If I was in that guy's position, I'd have popped smoke and tried to get away or use a speed boost, but maybe he didn't have either available. So, although the enemy team is still ahead on points, it looks very much like we can win this now, because that Kagero is... Kagero? Just kill the Kagero. Kutuzov starts with a K. Can use smoke, starts with a K, has torpedoes, yes, that thing. He's also very low health, and we do still have... it's not just me. I do still have multiple allies. I've got the New Mexico and the Edinburgh. Now, the New Mex is in a position where he could maybe help against the Kutuzov. I mean, okay, in a fair fight, New Mex versus Kutuzov, the Kutuzov could probably win, but the Kutuzov won't take a lot of killing at this stage. And unfortunately, though, however, I mean, I thought I'd pop the final smoke, stay unspotted, and at least use it to cap, because I was kind of hoping somebody would spot the Kutuzov and then I could stealth fire from the smoke. But that proved not to be the case, and the Kutuzov got into the cap just before I was able to complete, just literally seconds before. So now we know where he is. The carrier has naturally had planes overhead the entire time. Fortunately for me, however, they're not terribly well versed in making manual torpedo drops. So there's not really that much threat here. And because it's not the US dive bombers, yeah, he managed one hit, but it was nothing too damaging. The Edinburgh, meanwhile, has been continuing south instead of coming towards the cap. And I guess they figured the enemy carrier might be behind the island on the eye line. But it's pretty clear at this point that the carrier is actually just ahead of me, behind the rock or the island in H3. So, yeah, I'm basically the only person that seems to have shots on this Kutuzov particularly. Well, having said that, actually, the Edinburgh is firing at him as well. But he is about to come into cover from the Edinburgh's shots. The Edinburgh's shooting doesn't seem to be particularly effective there either. But then the New Mex turns up from behind the island and goes kablooey. So that was a chance at a Kraken. Denied, but there's still one more chance if I can just, survive, if I can not get torpedoed or dive bombed or whatever. 80k damage, 4 kills, 5 torpedo hits, bunch of main battery hits. I mean, it's not been a bad game overall, and we've now come down to this. Carrier at close range. And I make the classic mistake of getting over-eager and firing off my torpedoes early. I got a bit excited. It happens to all destroyer players. It's okay. I'm not judging myself too harshly. You just have to learn self-control and think about baseball. Yes. So, yeah, he obviously gets lots and lots of air spotting on those torpedoes incoming, starts moving forwards, and these are not fast torpedoes at all, so easily dodges the first wave, but he might take one of the second wave. What I should have done, of course, is just held onto the torps and gotten a lot closer. But even though I got a little excited at the sight of an aircraft carrier, one of them still does find the mark, so... and there we go, 2 of them in fact, so that's that bit less shooting that I have to do. Now I do briefly change even to AP shells, but this is not really a great angle for firing AP at a carrier, so right back to the HE, might as well just keep hammering away. And if I can get this guy, then it's a Kraken. That'd be quite nice, because I don't have a lot of Kraken medals. But there's also the New Mex and the Edinburgh firing at him, so... I don't know, we'll see. I've got a fire going, and there we go. The fire is actually what kills him. So that was the only medal in that game, a Kraken Unleashed. 129, nearly 130,000 damage done. Overall, not a bad game. And it's weird, because I don't consider myself a particularly good destroyer player, but when I look at my stats for destroyers, in some ways they're actually better than my overall stats for battleships. And I'm not sure why that is. I feel like I know what I'm doing in a battleship. I feel like I've got some clue. Whereas destroyers, I largely just kind of wing it. And I make so many mistakes. And yet somehow In a lot of ways, my stats are just better. So I must be doing something right. But I couldn't tell you what. So clear 500,000 credits profit there. Not a bad amount of XP in the rest of it as well. But yeah, overall that was quite a nice game, and one of the few games I have had in this ship, and I should probably play it a bit more, but it's one of these ones where I've got premiums where it's useful not only for making credits, but also I can train captains in them, whereas that's way less the case with the Low Yang. It's like the Briscovita as well. Nice ship, and it makes credits, but what am I going to use that captain for? So yeah, it takes longer with these isolated premiums, because you've got to play them a lot more to get the relevant captain skills that you want. Whereas ships that you're playing on the regular line, you can double up on your captain dailies and speed things up so much more. Especially so considering you've got things like flags and camos as well. So that was a bit of almost but not quite US destroyer action. And if you enjoyed it, you can hit the like button. You can leave any comments below telling me all the things I did wrong, the many, many things, I'm sure. You can sub to my channel if you haven't already. And as always, stay tuned for more.